My name is Sabelo Mtembu, and I'm joined by my co-host on the far right, brother Ricardo Smith. And we're excited, so excited today to have the internationally renowned, and you'll understand why I say this, the internationally renowned South African jazz saxophonist, Mr. Linda Sikhakhane, today.
Yeah.
Welcome, my brother. It's good to have you.
Thank you. So good to be here, Siyabonga.
Awesome. So tell us, for anyone who's encountering you for the first time, Linda, where you're from, where you were born. Just tell us a little bit about your background and life.
Well, my name is Linda Sikhakhane. I was born and raised in Umlazi Township. My family comes from Kwanongoma, that's northern part of KZN. Ulinda is a son, he's an uncle, he's a brother, and he happens to be a musician. I play the saxophone, and I am an artist.
Awesome. And you mentioned, obviously, that you're a brother, you're a son, and everything else, but most importantly, you're a musician. Tell me about your first encounter with music, your first experience. When did you pick up that music was something that you love or something that you're gifted in?
Well, I don't think I can remember because there are episodes that I cannot recall, but I would hear my parents speak about, is that I've been a musical child somehow. I would sing back to melodies that I've heard before. But my very own understanding of just that interaction with music was when I was 9 years old. In primary school, I joined a school choir, and then later joined a music class that offered music theory, basic music theory, and basic music lessons where we started playing the recorder. And my teacher then was Mrs. V. Rajmani. I would then, 2 years later, move to a music center in Umlazi, just a couple of meters away from my home, Siakula Music Center. Discovered by a neighbor that saw that I could play music, and they recommended that I should go to that school. And then I went to the school where I met the great Dr. Brian Tusi, who then nurtured my talent. I would then decide there that I would like to pursue music.
That's awesome, man. And in terms of your instrument, when did you first pick up that saxophone was your instrument of choice?
Well, the saxophone only comes in later. I think it was 2008. Before the saxophone, of course, the first instrument was the recorder. And then at Siakula Music Center, I started playing the horn, E-flat horn, the English horn. From the horn, I played trumpet. And then in 2005, I played recorder. Because, of course, I had this background on wood instruments because of the recorder. There was a time at Siakula Music Center where they had gotten a sponsor of clarinets, and then I was selected to be one of the students that would pick up the clarinet. And then in grade 10, I made a decision that I would go and pursue music at varsity. And my teacher then advised that if I want to pursue a career in jazz, I would then need to double on saxophone. And then at Siakula, because somehow I just related with this music, which is jazz. But that was just a year earlier before I picked up the saxophone. There was this young saxophonist at that time who played at the jazz band. And they were playing this very important song, Flowers of the Nation, by the great Babu Jonas Gwangwa. And this young kid, Philani Biela, he played the solo that's on the album. And the very solo was recorded by Ubabu Begimselego. And I just thought to myself that, well, I want to be like that kid, And when I got the opportunity to play saxophone, of course, I wanted to join that jazz band. And they allowed me to. And then 2 years later, I would go to varsity. And saxophone was, when I started the saxophone, it was supposed to be my second instrument because my main instrument was the clarinet. But yeah, it ended up being my, very own baby.
And from obviously experiencing all of that, meeting certain people, what were some of your, or who were some of your influences, both as you were studying your music, starting your music journey, and also just where you are now? Who are some of your most precious influences?
Well, many people, of course. One person that is very important to me that was there at the beginning is, well, not one person, but my family, of course, my parents, for allowing me to sort of like navigate towards that direction that they had no idea of what would really pan out in what I'm doing. And then in terms of my teachers, my very first music teacher, which was Mrs. B. Rajmani when I was only 9 years old in primary school. And then Dr. Brian Tusi, a very important man that started a center, that groomed a lot of young musicians that have become professional musicians that are really contributing immensely in the, South African archive today. Babu Kulegan Bengu, who was the director of the school, Ska Biela, who was the jazz tutor at the school, because he was the bridge for us to even go and study music at UKZN. And then, so many people. And of course, post-university, I meet people like Dr. Ndutuzo Makatini, who then became my mentor to this day. He's been my mentor for the past 13 years, if I'm not mistaken. And he has opened so many doors. He has, he's been the person that we really look up to, and we've seen how possible it is to navigate through this industry. It's people like him. And of course, we've got so many masters that we've been listening to through recordings, the likes of Babu Winston Mankunku, Babu Ezra Ngukana, Babu Peggy Mselegu, Babu Cherry Gunene, Babu Happy Tswaedi, Babu Fairfaku, Babu Andile Enana, the list is just endless. So one has been fortunate to be under the wings of these great teachers over the years.
For sure. Thanks. Yeah, before I can even ask, I feel I must state that I really love your music. I must, there's something transcendent about it. There's a certain, it's really out of this world, It's good that, you'd mentioned Ubamdutuzo Makatini. The first time I saw you perform was actually with him at, I think it was Cape Town Jazz Festival. Many years ago. 2018. Okay. So that's the first time I saw you perform live, and I think you guys performed Shine, and then he only released it like 3 albums later. But no, for sure, you've got a rich a catalog of music yourself. So you feature on quite a lot of prominent music that is shaping and reshaping South African music, and you release your own. You've got 3 studio albums and 1 live album. So maybe, if you can take us through what inspires you and what inspires those albums, and perhaps you can even start from the very first one, 2 sides, 1 mirror. We've got the whole night. 9 p.m. is a suggestion.
Wow, that's a very difficult question, and I've been thinking about it. When I watch a lot of interviews, and when this question comes up, I just become so nervous, because I don't think I have a really fancy story when it comes to how I record my albums. But one thing that I think is central to that kind of process is time. Every album is a response to certain episodes that happen around that time. Two Sides, One Mirror is my debut album. Two Sides, One Mirror comes when I was awarded the Summer Overseas Scholarship in 2016, and I was, preparing to leave to the United States, to move and study in the United States. And then I had a conversation with Makhathini, and Makhathini was like, Sikhakhane, now you are moving to a different world, to like a different place or a different country, different space. I think it's important for you, to have a way that introduces you, to have like a sonic bag that you can produce when you get there. This is Linda Sikhakhane, this is what I do. And I was like, yo, Mhlonish, I was not, like I've never thought about recording an album, And he said, Sikhakhane, I've got you. And then I remembered that I had sketches that have been playing in my mind and sketches that I've been recording on my phone. Then I started just going back to those sketches. And with just going back to those sketches, I ended up with 10 songs that have been playing in my system over the years. And then I put that together, presented to him, and I called a very close friend, Sakile Simane, a trumpeter, an amazing trumpeter. And Simane, I'm planning to go in studio. Who's the band? Let's decide who's part of the band. And then, on the call, we just bounced some names. Sanele Pagati on piano, Spelelo Mazibugo on drums, Nhlanhla Khatebe on bass, myself, of course, on saxophone, and then Sakile Simani on trumpet. And then, we figured out a date. They came to Joburg, and we went in studio, recorded this album. We had 2 days in studio, but, we were able to capture everything in one day. That very same night, we went to the Orbits and just celebrated, drank a lot of wine. Celebrating that we've got an album, and of course there was like another session, which was like post-production. Oh, one person that I forgot to mention is El Haj Ngarindong, who played percussion. And then the album featured Usis Omakoko Makhathini. The producer of the album, of course, was Babanduduzo Makhathini, so I had the courtesy of getting Uma Makhathini to sing vocals on the album, who also wrote lyrics to Hidden Love. So that's how the first album came about. Second album, An Open Dialogue. I'm in the United States. I've spent 2 years, and I'm right at the end of the program. So part of the program was to present a performance that really reflects on what one has been working on throughout the 2 years. So this is like my last recital. I play the performance, it's a good performance. I get friends to join me on the bandstand. Lex Cotton, who played piano, an American pianist. Zwelake Tumapeli Pierre, who played bass. American born, but South African, a very close friend. Played bass. On drums, Alon Benjamini from Israel, but who lived in New York at that time. Lise Dinzane, a South African trumpeter from the East End, and then a flautist, and I had a friend who played flute from Brazil, Redi Fernandes, who played flute. Of course, the performance was done. I'm done with school. I graduate. And the performance was recorded. I sent the recording to Makhathini, of course, my mentor. He listens to the thing. He sends a message. We've got an album. It's like, bro, what do you mean? It's Sikhakhane. This is such a special performance. We need to put it out. We get the files. I send the files to him. He comes up with an idea of grounding the album. What does he mean by that? This was you like exploring on what you've been working on in the United States, but let's try and then marry that to your roots in South Africa. How do we then bring this experience back home and just add elements that would speak to what we do in South Africa? We then, set up some time for a session in Joburg. We invite Sikhakhane to play percussion. We invite Ubabu Mabeleng Moholo to play percussion as well. We invite Jude Harpster to play the harp. Then it was another session. We invite Sakile Muleshe to record vocals. Then that was an added session to what we had recorded in New York, an open dialogue. I mean, it speaks to this whole idea of an open dialogue. The whole idea of an open dialogue is this dialogue that has been going on for years, as we might know that a lot of South African artists found refuge in the United States and elsewhere in the world because of apartheid. They went to exile. And with this album, I just thought that what does it mean for us to be in that part of the world in these different conditions? Even though the conditions are different now, but we are tapping into a bridge that has been, constructed over the years. You cannot travel to the United States and not think of Miriam Makeba and what they've done for us there. You cannot travel to the United States and not think of Mamleta Mbuli and not think of Babkefa Simenya and not think of Babu Huma Sigela and not think of Babu Begim Selego, because these masters have created these bridges. So an open dialogue really speaks about that. And for me, this was my version of this dialogue, where I get to a place and I gather with musicians that come from different parts of the world and we create a sound,
Wow. And we must give thanks to Bam Duduzo for prompting you that these are albums, because it's really a gift for us to have experienced that. An interesting thing on an open dialogue, you can't, so it's not one side responding to the other, even though there was one part recorded and then there was additional. I mean, how did you deal with that that two-way streak of musicality between what happened in New York and what happened in Joburg? Because from me listening, I can hear both sides responding. So I found that to be quite fascinating.
Well, I think the beauty of this music is that one thing that is central is improvisation. And we spoke about something earlier, that how this music matures over time. Of course, when we were performing in New York, we're not thinking about an album, that there could be elements that we will later add. But then also in Joburg with these musicians, they were not thinking about coming in studio and responding to a particular sound, because they did not know what was happening there. So even for them, it was like this first encounter, and how do we respond to this? Or how do we then tap into this conversation that is already ongoing? And I think that's the beauty of music, and also how we perceive music as Africans. Because music is this phenomenon that is very open to community. It's very communal. You can never get to a space and think that, okay, well, these harmonies are enough. I've got no space. Even if you go to church, it could be 5 people, there will be sound. It could be 100 people, there'll still be sound. So the elasticity of this thing that we call sound is very beautiful, because it allows people in all the time, So I guess with an open dialogue, really speaks to the title in itself. It's an open dialogue anyway. Yeah.
For sure. Thanks.
Man, that's a wonderful story. So in terms of your, so I know as an artist, for example, as a vocalist myself, as you progress as a musician, you find that what you used to think was your voice is no longer your voice, because obviously as you learn more, having like yourself having studied in the US and also studying in South Africa, you evolve as an artist. Tell us more about the evolution of your sound, how it has evolved over time, and where do you see it going?
Yeah. Well, to be honest, I don't have an answer for that last part of the question. But I think I have my own desires of where I would like to see my sound going. And, we think about growth, and in growth, we experience a lot of changes. If we think about the body, the body stretches in different ways, height, you grow different things that you've never experienced as when you were young. So I think it's the same with the voice, and also the influences play a big role. And I spoke about time as like a contributing factor to sound creation, but time is also a contributing factor to growth. So what I've been thinking about as I grow is originality. Like as I grow, I'm trying my best to be as original as possible, because I think through being original, then one can reach where you are destined to reach,
Oh, for sure. And in terms of evolution of sound, maybe, coming to your last two albums, Isambulo and Iladi, which are masterpieces, very, very beautiful. Can you tell us a bit more about that process of making those albums, and perhaps where you were at that point and how you approached this, and
Well, Isambulo, the music from Isambulo was conceived around lockdown. And of course, it was a new experience for everyone. This was something that we had not experienced before. So I was just thinking about how sound could be a mode for us to find revelation in these trying times. And of course, we were in spaces alone, trying to navigate, trying to figure out what does this new life entail for us? And then, thinking about how we've always presented music in spaces where we have an audience. We have this kind of response, But now we are put in a position where we would still need to present this music even though we don't have these responses that we are used to. And I used to say this during lockdown, that sound creators are very important in this time, because we say so many things like the properties of sound. We speak about healing. And now's the time to really, put these properties into play.
for sure.
And revelation really came to the fore. How then do I navigate music through this, sphere of revelation, trying to bring light to the people? And then it happened that just after lockdown, I had an opportunity to travel in Switzerland, where I was in residency, where I had a residency in Switzerland. And then again, my mentor was like, Sikhakhane, uyazi ndoda, makuse Switzerland, you need to come back with an album. Because now I've just, put together this group, with Swiss musicians, and I'm there for almost a month. So I have an opportunity to go in studio with these guys. But then I had the music that I've been, working on during lockdown, presented the idea to the guys. And of course, this was being in studio with more than one person was a new experience for us then, because we've been in lockdown and we've been in isolation for about 2 years. Then we gathered with these musicians and we recorded Isambulo. I took the project back home, added some elements, where I invited Babu El Haji Ngarindong to play percussion. And then I invited a very special friend, Paras Sibalkulu Dlamini, to sing on the album. Uparas, we went to school together. We went to varsity together back in 2010. And somehow he went into the Qom sphere of music and he did very well. So we decided that, hey, as we selendota ngapha and see that, you know. And he did an amazing job of, you know, presenting Unongoma. And, you know, we had an album, Isambulo. Iladi was recorded in 2023. Iladi was a response to the accolade that I had gotten from Standard Bank as the Standard Bank Young Artist in, was it 2022, I think, yeah. 2022. And then, well, this time around, Makhathini was like, you already know. This is how we respond to things. Yeah. You know the drill. So then I've been thinking about this configuration for some time, and this was an opportunity to explore on this configuration. A friend of mine from Washington, D.C., who lived in New York, who studied at the New School when I was in New York. We went to the same school, Kweku Samri, who played drums on the album. I invited him to come over. Zwelake Dumapeli Pierre, whom I had recorded with on an open dialogue. And then this time around, I was like, Bab Makhathini, I would like for you to play piano and produce the album. And he agreed to that. And then we put out this album with the support of Standard Bank, Iladi. This was a very important moment for me to pay gratitude to what was happening around my journey. And Iladi really speaks to that. This is where I pay gratitude. And, it happened that Iladi got a home at Universal Music Africa. And then through that same channel, Iladi got a home at Blue Note. So the album was released in 2023 or 2024. It was released last year. So that's my latest album, yeah.
And Ubam Dudos was the first South African to be signed to Blue Note. So Iladi would make you the second in South Africa.
Yes.
And I think that deserves a round of applause. I mean, that's amazing.
Now you know why I say he's an internationally renowned South African artist.
You know, when Ubab Makhathini signed to Blue Note, there was a time where we went to an interview with him. I think it was ENCA or something. And we were there together with Ndabo Zulu. So Siampelezele, and he was like, I ain't getting my daughter, let's just go there together. Okay, we went there, and they were speaking about this signing and this new album. And there's this message that he portrayed, which was very powerful, where he spoke about how his signing is an invitation, 100%. For more signings in South Africa, because he believes that there are albums that, he even said that in our archives in South Africa, there are so many albums that sonically belong to that label, the likes of Yakhali Nkomo. There's a Blue Note album, of course. And he really put this out that this is an invitation to many more South Africans, So I would like to think that we'll see many more people under that important stable. Yeah.
For sure. And there's something about South African music and South African jazz and, And I think once people hear it, then, you know, the world discovers what we as South Africans always knew, you know? And it's amazing.
I think, shall we take a few questions from our audience? This is your chance to ask any question to Brother Linda. Anyone? And then we'll take a break.
You can take this one.
So I am a big time fan of your music, and as a consumer of your music, I've realized something. How I perceive it, it sounds like it has these meditative qualities, and it makes me wonder, when you are composing music, are you searching for something, or are you revealing something about yourself?
Well, I think it's both. No, it comes in both ways. There are times where I'm really searching for something, and there are times where I'm trying to express like an experience.
Hi, I'm also a big fan. I try not to be a groupie. So you mentioned how in every different place that you were at, you would end up recording an album. I would just like to know, in all those different places, like in the US, what was the inspiration that you felt that was specifically about you being there, as same as when you were in Switzerland? And were there any elements of those places that you brought into those different albums? And if there were, what are those?
Well, okay. Well, the first time when I was not really home was in the US, an open dialogue. And I think, as we all know, New York is just New York. There's no other city like New York in the world. As people say, it's a city that does not sleep, and I never slept, you know. And I was actually thinking about this a couple of days ago. In New York, that was the only time I felt like I was a musician every day. Wow. Yeah. Like, you know, because of the frequency of the city, in school there was music all the time. You know, after school I would go to music venues, there was music 7 days a night. You know, and the only time where I would like try and get some rest was on Sundays, where I would do my laundry and, you know, just try and catch up with my schoolwork. But other days I would be out in the streets. If I'm not in school, I'm out in the streets. So I guess that really gave me an opportunity to create this bond with the instrument, because I used to play every day. There were only a few hours where I would not touch the instrument, but those few hours I was thinking about the instrument because of just the nature of the city. So many great musicians. And I get to a city where no one knows me, so I'm really starting over. I'm there to introduce myself. So I guess that comes out in the album, how I play the saxophone. There was this urge of, you know, just, it's like I was on my toes. My kind of playing then was like on my toes. And I really enjoyed that about the city, because it kept me really young. And, you know, I was at an institution where I was like kind of older than the students that were there. So somehow it kept me young, and I just wanted to play all the time. And then comes Isambulo after that. You know, I know a lot of musicians thought that since it's this period, lockdown, we'd have more time to our instruments. We'd play every day. And to be honest, most of us did not play every day. Like me personally, I was not, like I was I was not inspired to play. You know, I was not inspired to play, and I realized that there's this drive that we get from things that we do on a daily basis that somehow would push us into this whole idea of picking up an instrument and playing. But then, of course, we were experiencing a lot, loss, just this whole shift. So it was a challenge to pick up the instrument. And the only time I would pick up the instrument is when I wanted to express. So then, to be honest, at that time, I was not even practicing, but I was just expressing when I picked up the instrument. So the opportunity that I got then to go in studio, I then had to figure out a way of putting out an album where everything was calculated, because I'm not really used to this instrument anymore. So everything that I did was calculated, and somehow it, you know, it landed me into this particular sound where I had a particular direction at that time. So I guess that's how time inspires how we put out music. Yeah.
Just to follow up, and so you mentioned something about calling upon the healing power of music in that period, because music in itself is a reward, and there's an aesthetic to music, but there's also a purpose to music. So how do you balance that as an artist? That because you can always hear it when this is just about the aesthetic, and this is, you know, there's something else that we experience from it. So how do you balance that as an artist? And even going beyond your music, but also in collaborations and working with other artists.
Well, I think what's fundamental for me is the properties that the music carry, because that's my relationship to music. You know, and of course, we need to think about aesthetic, because we live in a world that, you know, requires that business essence to what we do. So I think it comes in different stages, where the fundamental has to be there, and then the aesthetic is then something that we think about later as how do we produce this body of work. So I would say that the aesthetic for me does not exist without the fundamental. Yeah.
Sure. I think that was a good segue, because, I mean, I think there's a lot of good themes that have emerged so far. Time, dynamism, and versatility, I think is the other one. But I think there's another theme that you spoke about, which is around the message. And I'm quite curious about, how do you remain true to your message, right? You spoke about, as time goes on, you think about originality. And what does that mean, and what does that look like for you? Because the more you lean into originality, the more you stay true to what you hear to portray, and the message you hear to deliver. Where does Ulinda go to tap into that? Like, what's your process in staying true to the message that you hear to deliver? And of course, it's nuanced, and time is, you know, is also a factor in that seasons change. But where do you go to stay true and access the message that you need to deliver at a point in time?
Ooh, okay, that's a very
Sorry,
charged
it's an unfair question. But we family, right?
Yeah. You know, when I released my first single on Ilati, so the lead single was Nkehli. So I get a call from my cousin, who has never said anything about my music, besides just saying, hey, Bafia Izara lento yakho sinokubona ku Facebook. You know. So Umzala calls me and he's like, hey, cousin, ngilalela Nkehli. Thank you for the work that you are doing. So I think about this, it's Nkehli, because my cousin can relate to the title of the album, because he knows what Nkehli means. And if I'm able to put out music that my family can relate to, then I'm doing something that is linked to where I come from. So this was one thing that really, you know, it was like some kind of charge to my body or to my system that the more we gravitate towards sounds that our very own people can relate to, then we are somehow gravitating towards originality. And if we think about originality, one thing that we can use as a central factor is language. You know, there's a lot that our languages carry. And as we all know that sometimes it's impossible to translate our languages because there's no translation for them, you know, for these languages. So I guess my way of like trying to be original is just reflecting on self and trying to study self, because that's not an easy thing. We are exposed to modernity, and as we all know, most of our histories somehow are just, you know, they are getting lost. You know, we are losing so much. And I guess through sound, one is able to tap into those like lost files of our lives. And if we can focus in like trying to get those sounds, maybe this could help the world in finding themselves in a way. So I don't think I have an answer really to your question, but the whole idea is trying to navigate towards what could be, you know, original to self.
Can I just quickly add something on Inkehli? So it's actually one of my favorites on the album. I'm not supposed to have favorites, but I have one. So I didn't know what it was, because I'm Swazi. Sithe Inkehli, Eswatini. But I felt that way about it before I knew what it was. And when I Googled it and I saw it, like, this makes sense. Why I would feel this way about the song. So in terms of connection, it definitely does connect back. And whether you're Zulu or Xhosa or Swati or Pedi or whatever your background heritage is, I think we can all relate on that fundamental level of what this message is, and it's quite profound.
I think we have one more question, and then we'll take, is it two? Two more
There's
questions.
two, yeah.
Two more questions, and then three.
Okay.
Oh, okay, that's good.
Let's say
more
three.
questions. Let's take the three questions, and then we'll break for dinner.
Okay,
All right.
thank you. I'm just bummed I don't have my notebook here. I'm a journalist by profession, and I don't really use typing on my phone. But the question I want to ask Ulinda is that when it comes to collaborations, most artists would want to collaborate with you, but what do you look at before agreeing? Are there certain collaborations that you would not agree to because you don't share the same values, or do you just agree to anything, or what do you look at for collaborations?
And no names, please.
No, I can't mention names. This is a tricky question because, you know, we were just speaking about it with friends, and I think for us to collaborate, then somehow we need to have like a similar vision as to how do you want to portray this voice. So I guess there has to be some kind of alignment in the vision. I guess we see value in different ways, and, you know, but that does come into play as well, because that's very important for an artist's journey. And as you would think that if we were to come together and collaborate on a meal, if one person is like lactose intolerant, then we cannot have milk in that meal, not unless we get almond milk or any other type of milk. So I see it in that way. If we are trying to put out a message that has some sort of alignment between our brands, then we would collaborate. But if there's no alignment, then maybe we might wait for a later time and see if then there is some kind of alignment.
I saw another hand. There was a question at the back.
My brother, we're big fans.
Thank you.
I'm very glad my learned friend actually dragged me. He's like, yo, you need to hear this guy. And you delivered. You're super amazing, my brother.
Thank
well
you.
done on everything.
Thank you so much.
I wanted to take her question a bit forward, so I'll ask it in twofold. With your collaborations, we've seen Untu Makatini going and collaborating with your black coffees outside of jazz. We've seen Ubabu Hiu do that as well, Nabu Ralph Gam, and I'm glad you spoke of aesthetics and properties being present. Is that something you would consider in terms of collabos? And then the second question, we saw a slight decline of attendance at jazz shows in the past years, and it really had nothing to do with COVID. It was just a decline. So the question here would be, outside of these shows, what should artists be doing to make sure that jazz is still that standard that is uplifted and respected in that manner, where it even draws in younger crowds, draws in audiences who would not be affluent jazz heads?
Okay. Well, yes, to the first question, I would definitely consider that. I'm not really strapped into genres. I believe in sound and I believe in putting out a message through music. So, I mean, I'm a fan to a lot of like artists that are not jazz musicians. And the people that you spoke about are people that I look up to. Bab Makatini, Black Coffee, Babu Hugh Masigela, you know, these are all my heroes. So I would really consider those kinds of collaborations. So the second question, speaking about the decline, yes, we've seen that over the years. And I think I just believe in innovation. I believe in like discovering new ways of existing in life. And I think, you know, it's just the time for jazz where we need to think about other ways of presenting the music so that we can bring in the numbers. And we've seen that jazz has a lot of numbers. Obabuhiu Masigela would fill up stadiums, you know. So I guess now is just the time for us to figure out, you know, alternative ways of bringing back those numbers.
And I suppose it's up to all of us, right? It's the artists, it's the listeners, it's spaces like these that, you know, give the platform and let jazz live.
Yeah, yeah.
Last question?
Yeah.
there's-
Dumela. Hi, everyone. I want to go back to that collaboration conversation, Linda, and you know, balancing cultural, I suppose, roots with contemporary expression has always been central to your work. Let's talk about how that duality, you know, affects you as a musician and as you create. How do you find yourself in the two? Yeah.
Well, I think it's simple. I stem from a place, I stem from a tradition, but I live in the now, which is contemporary. So somehow in my journey, I bring my roots, and I also collaborate with what is the now that I'm experiencing, and also navigating towards what could be the potential future. So somehow, as I navigate with what I have from my background, I'm open to what I come across, and I guess in my music I try to sort of like express those kind of like collaborations, which is my traditions, my past, my current time, and navigating towards the future.
I think we have one last question. So you. I think it was you.
Thank you so much. I didn't see the option for the yearly ticket because this is absolutely incredible concept. I think we get to listen and experience the music, but such an intimate space for fans and supporters to be able to engage on this level is absolutely incredible. Never mind the food, and I heard from my friend that it was really good. But so Linda, I mean, I feel like we've pretty much grown together in terms of sort of spaces that, like, where I first, had a relationship more with Linda's saxophone than with Linda. But I'm quite curious. The question really is, one of the reasons why I can't, and I'll always tell my friends, like, if Linda Sikhakhane is performing in Joburg, I have to go. And that's because I think there's a way and a generosity you give of yourself in a live setting that cannot be replicated. Like, I can't rely on saying, no, ngizombona rocks. If you're an Untitled, I'd rather figure out what I'm not eating that month so that I can do both. And I've just really always been curious with your relationship with the studio versus live, right? So maybe your relationship with live music, like why it feels like it almost matters to you in ways that other artists take for granted, that we music lovers can tell when a musician is playing because there's a big check, or whether a musician is playing because it's bigger than them. They don't have a choice, and I always feel like regardless of whether I'm seeing you on a big stage like Cape Town Jazz, Drave Jazz, or whether I'm seeing you in a more intimate space like the Freedom Station, you give of yourself in particular ways. And I want to figure out, because maybe I'm wrong, maybe you're more like in love with the studio process versus, what your relationship with the live setting is. And second to that, I find it really amazing that you bring in, or your relationship with voice as an instrument seems to be also something that is not, so I'll hear Ingehle, right? Or I'll hear Inner Freedom, and like I will love the song because like I love your music. And then on Umama, and then you get to the album launch and you're bringing in a vocalist, right? I think it was Riba Red the last time, and then it was Upara Slamini. What is your relationship to voice as an instrument in the context of live settings? Because I've seen that in your what's that word? Your albums, you'll have the song and then there's an experience of it live where you then feature a vocalist. Is that an intentional choice that you make, or is it just coincidental that mhlambe the vocalist hears the music and is like, damn, I really need to lay some lyrics on the vocals? Because even the songs with vocals on the albums, you'll never perform them often with a vocalist. And the beautiful thing about your playing is that it doesn't matter either way. Like a Linda Sikhakhane show is gonna bang either way. But those are two questions that are interlinked. I'm sorry if I took too much time, but it was the relationship with live music versus studio, and also then your relationship with voice as an instrument. Thank you so much.
Cool. Question number one, I think I I think I prefer live settings because there's an interaction, and I just feel like music is communal. So when we play in a live setting, of course now this, you know, there are so many distractions in how the music is presented, where it seems like we are performing for people, but my relationship to music is not like that. It becomes a gathering between the bandstand and the people that are here to, you know, gather with us. So I prefer that kind of setting. Because in studio it does feel like, you know, we are boxed into this studio and we've got these mics and, you know, so it does put some level of scare in how we do it, but over time, and, you know, because we are professional musicians, we've figured out a way of navigating that space and also realizing the importance of documenting what we do, but I still prefer like this live setting. In terms of these considerations that I have when performing the music, getting vocalists in, I guess I call in people that really inspire me. I call in people that I think could add an element that speaks to what I'm trying to present. And in some instances, it's not even a thing of this particular song needing vocals, but it's more of I need this person to be part of the group. Then we make a decision, which, okay, maybe on this song, ungahubi into ethize. And us being Africans, I spoke about this idea of coming into a space, and when you hear people sing, this space is like an open invitation for people to add stuff. So our music is really open to that. Our music is really flexible for us to add on ideas, even if it's not like ideas that we've preconceived. But our music is that open, because our music is really central in improvisation. And so I remember this other time when I told Uparas, okay, because we had recorded Unongoma naye. So Parasi, we have an album launch. You sang on one song, and the gig has 2 sets, 45 minutes each. So now we need to figure out ukuthi ungaphinda ucule kuphi. And I think I was flying from Cape Town to Joburg, just thinking about inner freedom, and this melody came to me, you know. Sesicela inkululeko kini ngengoma endala. And then I recorded it whilst, you know, ngise-flightini. When I landed, I sent it to Sibalkhulu. Sibalkhulu calls me. Now he's singing the melody. Now the melody makes sense because he's a vocalist. And then we just vibed on that. So ezinye izinto ziza as like a vibe, you know. And that's the beauty of our music, is that there's always something to explore. So that's why I would invite people to be a part of that performance, Uriba, because I love her voice so much. I was like, okay, I would need that element for this launch. So I invited her, and then I, you know, gave her songs, and I was like, just figure out what you can do on these songs, and she did exactly that.
Awesome, man. I think we have a lot more to talk about. For now, we'll just take a dinner break, and then when we come back, we have so many questions that we have for Ulinda. And yeah, just think of anything that you want to ask, that you want to know. Yeah, we'll see you after the break.
Thanks. Welcome back to the second half of Jazz Journey with Ulinda Sikhakhane. Really insightful session that we've had, and hoping for even more engagement from you guys. We still have a few questions, but we'll try to limit them so that we've got. There's people with short questions that are actually quite long. So we'll make room for short questions. So thanks. So just picking up from where we left off, you spoke about quite a bit of collaborations, and I'm sure each one holds a special place, in your heart and in your musical contribution to South Africa and Africa and the world at large, because beyond what you guys are doing for yourselves, you are contributing to what we say is South African jazz. So maybe just to touch on some of those collaborations. I mean, you've worked quite a bit with Nduduzo Makhathini. You've worked with and I mentioned this, about Paras, that I actually searched his stuff and I had to Google whether it's the same person, because his music was very different from how he collaborated with you. And some of your other contributions to South African jazz history, including your works with Abo Ndabo, with Queen Nandi Sweet, with Abo Mbuso Khoza. How do you approach those collaborations, and any particular comments, because the work that you've done is quite important, and I think those collaborations as well are also quite important, and are part of who you are as an artist.
Well, one forms part of a community, and with this community, when a part of the community decides to send a message through music, they have like these kind of options, that we've got these different voices in this community and we all have access to these voices. So I think these collaborations, that's how they come to life, because we are all family, and being on stage or being in studio together then becomes a celebration of love that is existent in this, family setting that we form part of. So being part of these projects was not something that is foreign to me, because these are people that I already know. These are people that I truly love. And I guess as an artist, we are in this like journey of just waiting for an opportunity to say something. And when you get that invitation, that invitation presents an opportunity for you to say something. And of course, being called to be a part of a project, you are tapping to a narrative that is, a part of that project. And by way of being invited to that project, you are also aligning yourself with the vision of the person that has invited you. So for me, that's always exciting to be invited in different projects, because it becomes a learning curve. This person is trying to portray this story. This person is introducing me to these histories that I have no relationship to. And also it's just a celebration of this one voice, which is, South African jazz, or a voice of South Africa when it comes to music. So I'm always looking forward to these kind of collaborations.
For sure. Thanks.
Oh, that's good, man. And I want to talk about the mentors that you've mentioned, that you have, like Abobab Nduduzo. Am I right to call him Obab Nduduzo? And a couple of your other mentors growing up. What are some of the things that they have taught you that you would like to pass on to the next generation of musicians, jazz musicians, or let me just say artists, who are looking up to you? What are some of the things that you would like to pass? What are some of the things that your mentors have taught you that you would like to pass on to the next generation of artists who are coming after you?
Care. I've been very fortunate to be under the wings of people that really care for me. We come from a special school in Umlazi Township, Sikhakhane Music Center. And of course, Babtusi's vision was to afford black people that lived in the township an opportunity to study music formally, if I were to put it in that way. So just that level of care. I remember not so long ago I was speaking to Umam Tusi, because Babtusi is late, And Umam Tusi speaks about how he would ask Babtusi ukuthi, "Ay, mkhwenyana, awucabanga ukuthi usebenze kakhulu kuleli sonto. It's too early for you to wake up and go and teach." And Babtusi would be like, "Nkosikazi, umuntu omnyama uyangidinga. So I need to be available for those people." So the level of care and this sense is available with all my mentors, through all my mentors. Makatini, the level of care, where he decides to take a risk and invite I think I was 21 or 20, a 20-year-old Linda to play on his debut album. I was inexperienced, and he gets me there, and of course I'm being mentored in the process of recording Mother Tongue, and just that level of care, just thinking that I'm going to take this risk to help build this voice. And this is how I get to be known in Joburg, because I'm seen with Makatini. So this level of care is very essential in what I do, and I just think about the importance of giving back, to the ones that come before us, to the ones that come after us. Because the ones that come before us have given back to us. So in my journey, I'm very invested in giving back. I'm involved in a lot of community projects, particularly Sikhakhane Music Center. I'm very involved in their programs, trying to help them get funding, trying to help them, formalize their structures of music education. And also, if I were to share my inboxes, I've got a lot of young cats that reach out, and I try by all means to be available for them. So what's really central with these mentorship programs that one has been a part of is the level of care. And as we all know as Africans, this master-disciple relationship is very essential in our, journeys. And I think it's not foreign. I know that I've got a responsibility, to just be available for the ones that need certain opportunities that I can, give out.
No, for sure.
And in terms of, obviously, a lot of people will join you at different stages of your, career journey. But take us back into the background of some of the challenges that you've had to face as an artist to be where you are. If you don't mind just sharing some of the challenges. I guess many of us are sitting here and seeing celebrating the success that you've had, but we don't know some of the challenges that you've had to overcome. Would you like to share that with us?
Oof. Well, I guess one challenge has been loving self, because you are exposed to so much, and when you are young, you would think that there's a certain template that you would need to match, you know, and going through music schools. Of course, we're trying to achieve a certain way of playing. And sometimes trying to achieve that way, you realize yourself that this is not natural, you know, to me. But then with the help of these mentors, they've been able to help me to love myself and love what my abilities are in trying to put out a voice, you know. And I guess for me, that has been a very central challenge in my journey. And this is something that I would not speak about. Even my friends are here. I've never even spoken about that. I've never really, you know, shared that this is one challenge. Of course, you would go to a class and you'd need to play a certain way because these are the standards. But then those standards are not really what your heart desires, you know, would desire. And so growing up, I've been in that journey of just trying to love myself and understanding that in life we are brought here to do, you know, our very own personal things, and our goals are personal. There's no template to life. And I guess other challenges are just the challenges that we face in the industry, the change. We spoke about how the industry has changed. I guess this is one thing that we need to think about. How do we have an institution that speaks to arts and culture but that has no voice for the arts and culture? Yeah, I think I'm going to stop there.
So, I mean, I guess some of it is, there's quite a lot of political elements in terms of our current societal makeup, locally and globally. I think we all read it, we all see it, we all get angry, depressed, and shout out. Perhaps just maybe touching on the role of music in the current times we find ourselves in. Yeah.
Well, I guess music is an outfit that can be used in different spheres or in different settings. And I guess I can speak about jazz because I'm a jazz musician. And as we know, that jazz is a music that comes from notions of displacement, notions of trying to find self, and music that was used in South Africa as a voice that was seeking liberation. And of course that has evolved over time, where the music still finds itself in that position because we are still seeking liberation in certain ways. There are promised freedoms that we are yet to see or experience. But then music, jazz music, is a way of expressing, as a way of documenting time, as a way of bringing us closer to our culture. And I guess culture is very central in this particular music. Culture is a way of, you know, expressing where we come from, but also as culture as a way of trying to move away from these displacements, as a way to locate home. So I guess, as I had mentioned earlier, that music becomes an outfit that fits in that particular moment.
For sure.
So you've had the privilege of studying jazz music, both locally and internationally. What would you say are the differences that you've noticed in terms of pedagogy, like how music locally is imparted and received by music students versus, you know, in the US, for example? What are some of the differences that you've seen in terms of how music is taught that would have made you to pursue an international degree?
Well, the first jazz program in South Africa was brought by Darius Brubeck, an American at UKZN back in the 80s. So the program that is being taught in South Africa is an American program. So my idea of going and studying abroad was not based on the program that I would get there, but it was an opportunity for me to be in that space. So school was actually a channel for me to be in New York for 2 years because of the opportunity that I had gotten. But speaking about how people receive music, of course in South Africa, we have our own histories and our own indigenous relationships to the music. So how we receive music would be different from another place because they have their own indigenous ways. So what was really interesting for me is that jazz is an African music. So somehow this music becomes a portal for us to sort of like remember in a collective way. So this music has been space for like collective memory and seeing how we've been practicing the very same music parallel to what was being practiced in the United States. Because jazz was practiced in South Africa back in the 1920s when they were practicing the music, and we've seen over the years how there has been this parallelism between these two places, where we had Winston Mankunku in South Africa that had so many similarities with how John Coltrane in the United States sounded. So what I really found interesting is that we share this one thing, which is sound, and it really proves that this music moved from the continent to the United States, and it remained to be this one source for us to find each other and have one voice.
And still on that subject of education, music education. So often young people make the mistake of thinking that simply because I'm talented, I'm now ready for stage. You know, what do you think education has done for you that your just your talent alone wouldn't have allowed you to achieve?
Well, I think inquiry is important, whether you're inquiring on the streets or at a university. And going to school really helped me organize what I knew in music or what I thought I knew. And this was an opportunity to expand on this knowledge. And also the fact that today I can write music, I can relate to global stages as to how then do we come to music as a way of music becoming a language that is not the same as how we speak. We could be in one room and just use music as a language. So I guess, as we all know, even with the languages that we speak, there's a school for that. If I had, if I grew up in Swaziland with a Swazi family, I would speak Isiswati. If I grew up in the Eastern Cape with the Xhosa family, I would speak Xhosa. So I guess school then is a language in itself that we can relate to. If you study psychology and you meet another student in psychology, there's something that you can relate to, you know. So I think it's the same with music. Going to school, there is like a deeper level of this music, the philosophy of music, which needs one to be vested in this study to have a better understanding of it. So I guess it's important. It was important for me. Some people can do away without school, but there is a level of understanding that people can ride on the same train because of this particular journey of studying this, you know, thing.
Should we take some questions? We have some time for questions. I see some hands.
Do you think that majority of the upcoming and current jazz artists that we have in South Africa are in it for the love and music and purity, as you said, being true to self? Is it about having a good voice and being in front of an audience? Do you think that it can be bettered? Do you think that it will be portrayed the same way in 10 years and more to come, based on where we are today? And looking back, like you said, the guys laid a platform for you guys. You guys are trying to lay a platform for the guys who are up and coming. And do you think that we are true to self as Africa with the music we have, based on the fellas that we had, the Thandiswas that we have? Who is the next Thandiswa, as an example? Not to say that we need to have the same, you know, kind of caliber, but based on where we are today as a jazz nation, do you think that we are on the right path? And do you think that up and coming artists are on the right path to where we should be leading?
The opportunities that artists get change all the time. We've seen how limited venues are. Hence, we have this opportunity today as a way to, you know, as a way to like invent new ways of portraying a voice artist. So these are the things that we should think about. And of course, we cannot disqualify how people perceive music and how people see the world today. But I just think that evolution is central, and everyone is just trying everyone is trying so hard to, you know, to express. Everyone is trying so hard to find themselves, you know, in this journey that is uncertain sometimes, because we really don't know what's there for the music tomorrow. So I guess people are just trying. And of course we cannot disqualify what comes out from that period of trying, and we cannot disqualify what people have received, you know, in the sound spheres before that is different from what they receive now. But as an artist, I just think that one has a goal to contribute something positive in the world, and I believe that everyone is trying.
Just listening to your response, and I also have to question myself, even in my own question, that was it me just not resonating with some of those eras? But from a personal perspective, I suppose, I feel now in the last 5 years, I don't know commercially, because there can also be a difference, but musically, I feel like there's a golden era of South African jazz where there's so much brilliant stuff that's being produced and put out there. Whether it's being appreciated or not is another thing altogether. But I also feel that we have had periods of like average music, periods of brilliant music, periods of like dryness and you know. And yet again, maybe that's just my perception of it and not connecting to it. But I guess just some of the comments around the era we're in and what it's taken for us to get here and what does it take for us to sustain this?
I think it's just to keep going. Because how I see it is that there's a spotlight, right? And we've got these movements that are called genres. Hip-hop, kwaito, jazz, house music. So all of these movements are in motion, waiting for the spotlight to spot at them. So if we are constantly moving, that spotlight will come back again, because it has been there for jazz. But I think we should celebrate that the spotlight is on amapiano music, because the genre is thriving, and this is for all of us to celebrate. So if we keep moving, everyone will just get their turn.
So there was this Joy of Jazz where Marcus White was playing Jonas Gwangwa, Wynton Marsalis was playing Jonas Gwangwa. It was the two bands. And there was a difference in the way the sound came out and the execution of the songs. So in your education and your flair as well, from an African perspective, Mina, as someone who's sitting there and listening, I heard a difference. And I could not point it exactly, what is it? But there was an execution level that Lincoln at Jazz was doing. And this is not their artist. They were celebrating Jonas Gwangwa. But our band was, maybe reserved. And posed to that question as well, I don't know if this happens a lot in just jazz but I know it in other genres when American artists come here, or let's just say foreign artists, the sound just gets better. Why is that?
Listening to the albums, I always miss the old Wynton because I always felt like, this jazz at Lincoln Center orchestra stuff, it's just too messy. Like when you listen to an album. Then I saw it live, and I think for me, what it showed me, and I hadn't seen it live before, was that the power of arrangement. And I think they've spent so much, because we've kind of thought of jazz as, the melody, the rhythm, the solo, the improvisation, but the power of big band and the power of arrangement. And I think it's also is a bit unfair maybe on the it was a friendly competition because it was ZA Orchestra versus Jazz and Lincoln Center. Jazz at Lincoln Center Orchestra lives together. They play together. And to his point, you drop a music instrument for a few hours, and even when you drop it, you're thinking about it. And they're not only thinking about their instrument, they're thinking about their arrangement and how they can rearrange songs. And if you listen to a lot of the albums that they've released, you actually find that they often revisit a lot of music with a big band interpretation and their own arrangements. And so sometimes it's a calling, like that's also what I took from it as well, that the calling that Wynton has kind of gone on is also just not reimagining, because it's not, it's taking influence from music that has happened and occurred, and then kind of reimagining it and rearranging it in such a profound manner that it just shocks you. And I think sometimes what I realized as well is that I missed it on the CDs. I had to see it live to understand that, wow, this is how good these guys' arrangement is. And I don't know to what extent that the ZA Orchestra lived that vision of arrangement. That was just my perspective. And then also, like, New York is an absorber of a lot of artists. So you get the best of the best across the globe. So in any particular moment, you could have actually found, in fact, there were South Africans who were part of Wynton Marsalis' band. So at any point in time, you could have found Elinda Sikhakhane, part of that band. You could have found, and then ZA Orchestra, they're not as big, not as famous, and maybe they don't attract as much global talent. Brilliant talent, but shopping from a smaller pool versus everyone who wanted to be part of Jazz at Lincoln Center Orchestra. But the big thing that I learned, and this is just from a listener, not a player, was just the power of arrangement. And I'd never really thought about it, appreciated, or seen it as much in action as I saw it that night. And I think my wife was complaining because I think for the 3-4 nights, from Thursday, Friday, Saturday, I saw Jazz at Lincoln Center Orchestra. But what was also amazing for me was the recognition, because they spent a week here. The recognition, and Unduduzo performed with them on Saturday. And not only performed with them, performed Duke Ellington's, I forgot the song. Sorry? Sorry? It's a blues song. And a very revered song, even by Wynton. And the fact that he would step aside his own pianist for a guy he just met. I don't know if he met him before, but maybe a guy he met a week ago, to say, please perform the song, and the introduction of it also spoke about the power of South African jazz artists. So, and I think where we've always focused on is on expression, on the message of the music and what it carries across. And different people will carry different things, and that recognition as well from Wynton and the Jazz and Lincoln Center Orchestra to say, no, we actually need someone like Unduduzo to play the song. And not only Unduduzo, they actually had a night where they had Tandi Ntuli performing with them. They had Zoe Motira, they had quite a lot of artists. So there was a lot of dual recognition. And I think because we are used to South African jazz and we're used to receiving something from it, that when we receive something else, we appreciated it more. And you may find that you take an American audience, they had Makoi Mrobata as well, that you take an American audience and they hear these South African jazz artists for the first time. They're not used to hearing the South African perspective of jazz. And they appreciate that even more than the arrangement that they see week in, week out from Jazz at Lincoln Center Orchestra. So I just took that out. So just wanted to relieve some pressure from the question, but to the main person.
Well done, good job.
Well, I guess Ricardo has covered most of it. He was there. I was not, I was not at the Jar of Jazz that year, but just hearing all these perspectives, I just think that there's a certain style in which people want to present their music, and there are certain nuances that belong in particular places, and music is inspired by different things that people are exposed to. In South Africa, we are exposed to mountains, we are exposed to the rivers, we are exposed to a different landscape. So that plays a big role in how we play our music or how we sound. So just thinking, as a person that was not there, I would like to think that these two bands sounded different because they come from different locations.
Oh, yes.
Personally, I feel, and I, as someone who consumes quite a lot of live music, and this is not just the revered musicians like Sikhakhane, but also, you know, the younger cats. I think that there's a particular style of playing that is very unique to how our musicians play. And of course, it's probably because of you either from Siyakhula or you from TUT or you learned music at the church, but we know the places where the music is nurtured. I think for me, there's the only two big issues I would say I have with the sound is that there seems to be a lot of pressure with the young cats to sound like they're seniors, right? So that also stifles a lot of creativity. I think it stifles a lot of, you know, growth. I think because of the limited opportunities there is for performance, first of all, for collaboration, etc., because of the shrinking space. Younger musicians don't want to mess up, right? There's no space, there's no chance to fail and start again, right? So there's a lot less experimentation, there's a lot less of like just bands coming together. I think, Linda, if I'm not mistaken, didn't you have a band called H3? Or is it H2? But H3. That's how far back I go with. But I think we're like, and I'm probably gonna get into trouble for this as it's recorded and I'm seeing a camera in my face.
We'll cut it out.
But it is what it is. I think there is a sense of also not even maybe younger musicians, but maybe musicians playing for other musicians and not necessarily trusting that, you know, your audience will find you. You know what I mean? The music is vast, right? It's great to have someone you look up to, but you don't have to sound like that person for you to be validated in your artistry. But I also think there's too much of an obsession, and I'm speaking as a young, youth and a young person, that there's a sense almost that the best music we will ever hear, particularly the best jazz music we'll ever hear, has already been made. And that is such a big contributor to why I feel that, you know, the scene is not growing, why folks are, like, we respect the Duke Ellingtons and the Miles Davis and, you know, the Moses Molelekwas, the Hugh Masikelas. There's a whole great list of them. But it's also okay to not feel and really get a sense that that's not the best. I can't live my life thinking that's the best music I'll ever hear, because what's the point of me continuing to engage, you know, the genre and the live music? And I think those kinds of pressures also probably fall on, you know, musicians themselves. And I think, yes, there was really amazing music made back in the day. Yes, there are legends in the scene that date back, you know, 60, 70 years. But I think once we begin to have a sense that, you know, great music can also come out of our generation. In fact, great music is coming out of our generation. We will continue to not grow as a scene.
I think it's okay to be inspired.
Yeah.
And I think it's impossible to wake up with a voice. If you think of a child, I spoke about how one is able to speak a language because of their influences. And just thinking about myself, growing up as a kid, I wanted to speak like my dad. I wanted to act like my dad because this is the figure that I was exposed to. This is the figure that inspired me. But today I don't sound like my dad. I sound like myself because I've grown over time. But at some point I was inspired by him, and through that inspiration I was able to find my voice. So to answer your question, where you speak about how young musicians sound like the older musicians, I think let's just give them time to grow, because at some point they will figure out what their voice is.
I wanted to bring love into the picture.
And I think love from a place of a source of sustenance in, or even presence in creating music. I think, you know, you articulated how much you love the music, how much you love jazz, how much you love and how much you've grown in this space. But I'm even thinking about love as a source of being within the jazz space. And I think, you know, there's capitalism and there's all kinds of things and so many systems, but love in itself is a system that keeps us in the music. And I wonder to what extent you draw from that. And there's so many dimensions to love, right? So to what extent do you see love as a system from which you draw from to keep you in the music as well? That's one question. And then the other question really is about legacy, because I don't think, and you've hinted, and from the beginning of this conversation, there's so much legacy that comes through as a theme in what you've spoken about, because you've been sewn into naturally, and you've said you're involved in a lot of community work, right? So I'm thinking about legacy from a place of, one, archiving the music that you're creating, but also the stories that you're able to tell, right, through your music, and creating platforms for other Black children, like your 9-year-old self, to believe that it's possible to make this music. So to what extent do you see yourself playing a role in, one, archiving the work of Black jazz artists right now in this time, but also showing that it's possible for a 9-year-old to think that they can take space in this genre of music in the future?
Love is already in your DNA, and as a human being, we speak about Ubuntu, and I think a fundamental property of Ubuntu is love. So love is always fundamental, and love has contributed so much in, you know, in my journey as a musician, in my journey as a human being, in my journey as just, you know, a particle that forms part of this world. Second question, legacy. A portal that would help generations, you know, to come. And I will continue teaching. I will continue serving the communities. I will continue serving the world through this voice of music. So I guess legacy is a responsibility that I would never, you know, shy away from.
I think we have a question at the back. Question or comment?
I'll give you a case study. Recently, I was in a conversation. In fact, I'll take it back. Those of us who are in the room who grew up in the 90s, Johannesburg, know very well that Bree Street was sales house in the corner with a huge circle around, and people used to perform in the middle of that circle. There was artist development. So we've got those who are sitting in Makasi and are saying to each other, but where's the jazz? And they stick with the Winton, they stick with the Count Basie, they stick with the Dizzy, because we don't have a voice that is uniquely our own. And this is not a comment that is supposed to be a question, but something that can sit in the back of our minds as we wrap up tonight. Where are we to those who are following the true jazz that is jazz? They look at our version of jazz, and I love the fact that Zach says it's our kind of music. They do not understand where we are. And recently with a pianist, and I said to him, so why is it that you are moving away from the traditional sound of jazz? And he said to me, it's because I've grown. Why are we not taking our audiences with us? Why are we so I suppose, fixated in trying to sell globally or maybe appeal to a younger market, that we are leaving those who have continuously celebrated jazz for its purest form? Not with the fusion of so-and-so, but in its own form, our kind of music, Zax and Kosi, again, unquote. So as we wrap up tonight, let's think about that. Let's think about how we're going to affect, and those who are going to be coming up with albums. Yes. Let's think about how we're going to reach out to our audiences in a sense that those emakasi sitting at appreciation societies, Emma Tavern, can relate to our sound, because I'm the one who's on the radio trying to convince everyone who Linda Sikhakhane is. But they're like, but who is that? Let's think about that. I'll leave it here.
So maybe just a question, just on the back of that. I guess it's a bit of an age-old question around who does the player play for? Right, and it's always been kind of between two people. Are you playing for yourself? Are you playing for the audience? Or are you playing for something else? Yeah, I was going to add a third element and say, are you playing for something else?
Give him time.
Maybe I'm still trying to digest the word play.
Yeah.
Well, I think I'm trying to express.
For sure.
And whoever needs that kind of expression will somehow follow the sound. Because then if I were to say I'm playing for this particular audience, then I think I would be harsh on myself, where I have no relationship to what I'm doing. So I guess the important thing is for me to have a relationship with what I'm doing, and I use my music as a vehicle for expression. And if I write a song that speaks about a mother, whoever wants that kind of relationship and sort of like resonates with the sound or with the message that the music carries will be a part of that journey.
For sure. Yeah, thank you.
So we are kind of at the end of the evening, well, sort of, and there's something in front of you that I think took a lot of work to get to. And now that I've had some, I'm not too sure we got there, but I think every time we do this stuff, we're trying our best to really deliver on the promise, right? And so when we're trying to infuse impepo into the custard, I'm not sure. Sage, I mean, white people call it sage. It sounds a bit more savory and consumable. But that was the point. You know, it was, how do we take, the guy said, traditional, nyama entloko, Khodu Monday. I was like, how are we going to end the evening? And I figured the most South African thing to do is, you know, either a cook sister or this milk tart. And how do we impress upon his story into this thing? But I can assure you now, we did not achieve that, which is okay. It's fine. No. I mean, I've had it, so I know. I know where we're at. And it's okay, but I'm giving you the background of how we're trying to get to it. And that was to infuse this, I believe, very momentous plant in our culture as black people, just generally, you know. And you may find to be maybe there, like slightly, but that was the intention. And in trying to interpret a Zulu man into a dessert, this is where we got to. So I hope you enjoy it nonetheless. And, you know, at the end, it's about appreciating our time with him, you know, and what we've taken from his story. And I hope the night encapsulates that, because really, from my point of view, that's all we could contribute. And it's been a fantastic evening, you know.
you're the, like, I said to someone, you're the coolest cat I know. I was like, I met this guy and I was just like, Aibo, how can a guy be this cool? You know, like he's super cool. Like voice never goes up. It's just like this inflection point is at the same place all the time. But like also clear of mind, right? It's not like he just answers stuff for the sake of it. When he answers things, you're just like, jeepers, brother. You've thought about that like once or twice, right? And that's like why we were doing the work, right? And it reinforces why we must continue, because with every session, we get to understand the depth of the people that produce the music we so love and adore and celebrate loosely, right? Because we never consider what was going on when we were producing or thinking about or conceptualizing. And so I appreciate the moment. I appreciate the time you've taken to be with us and what you've given of yourself to allow this evening to become. And with that, I want to say thank you, bro. That's all I can give you. Thank you. Thank you. And thanks to the hosts for always, holding it down. Onolo, we appreciate you for accompanying your partner in crime. We have a gentleman by the name of Batin who makes this thing work. If everyone knows about him. Thank you, brother. But to everybody else who's here, you make this evening what we hope it looks like to everybody else, so they can subscribe, so that they can be part of the evenings and make this more than what it's meant to be. So thank you, everybody. And I hope you had a good night. Hope to see you next time.
I'd like to
Thank
share
you.
a story if you guys don't mind.
Absolutely.
Cool. So when Kagiso invited me, showing me the space, so we just walked down the stairs, Sizongena la. So he shares his idea, and then he poses a question, so what do you think can be done here? And I'm like, man, I've been thinking about this trio, because all I'm thinking about is a performance. I guess as a musician or a sound creator, when I walk into a space, I think about acoustics, and I'm already thinking about what could be presented in this space. Hence, I brought my saxophone, because when he shared his idea with this whole, like when he shared the whole concept, then I understood, it's okay. This is based on conversation. And then I told him that I would like to bring my saxophone nonetheless. And now thinking about what these conversations entail, speaking about my childhood, I'm just reminded of how my home was a performance space. And how my home was an interview space. I would imagine that later in my career I would be, somewhere in like a radio interview, TV interview. I would play for my parents, because I could imagine that at some point in my life I would be on some stage. And of course, I've been in a couple of stages. I've got some important performances coming up this year. And I just thought that why not just express that feeling that I had back home, where I would play for my parents, where I would be in this intimate space and just present something. So if you guys would allow me, I would like to play.